the Bulls, though, they drafted Ayu Dosunmu at number 38, who I couldn't believe fell that low. I thought that was great for them. They acquired Lonzo Ball in a sign and trade on a 4-year, $80 million deal. It can get up to $84 million with player incentives. He's a player option on the final year, so that deal is technically fully guaranteed. They sent New Orleans Thomas Satoransky, Garrett Temple in a dual sign and trade, and they sent a 2024 second round pick and cash also to New Orleans. They also signed Alex Caruso for 4 years, $37 million. $30.1 million is guaranteed. He only has a $3 million guarantee in that final season. Everything sounds spectacular there. They also signed Tony Bradley to a 2-year deal, the player option on that second year. They signed Matt Thomas to a 1-year deal at the minimum. They got a $5 million trade exception for sending Daniel Tice to Houston. They signed Javonte Green to a 2-year deal, non-guaranteed in that second year. All of that, fine. This is where shit starts to go off the rails for me, though. They acquired DeMar DeRozan on a 3-year, $81.9 million deal, and they also got back their own 2025 second-round pick. That 3-year, $81.9 million deal for DeMar DeRozan is fully guaranteed. That is one level to this. To earn the right to pay DeMar DeRozan that much money, they gave up Thaddeus Young, Al-Farouq Aminu, a 2025 first-round pick. It is top 10 protected in 25, top 8 in 26 and 27, and they also sent out a 2025 second-round pick. Then they acquired Derrick Jones Jr. And Portland's 2022 first-round pick, lottery protection through 2028. These protections, man, they are extending all the way out. That feels like a new trend. They also got a 2023 second. It's from Cleveland, but it's Denver's 2023 second, for Lauri Markkanen in another sign and trade. I'm just curious as to what you think about their offseason. As a brief recap, their notable subtractions include they lost Thad Young, Daniel Tice, Lauri Markkanen, Garrett Temple, Al-Farouq Aminu, and Thomas Satoransky.
So this is the team I was referring to at the top when I talked about, you got to grade these teams on, what are their goals, and not every team's trying to win a championship. And we knew this, but we knew that was the case for the Bulls because you don't trade 2 future firsts for Vucevic, whose career highlight is a 42-40 Magic team that got bounced in 5 games in the first round. You don't prize Zach LaVine as a super duper star, which I think they do. So having said all that, it's the DeRozan. So I think the Bulls are better. I think the Bulls are better on the court this coming season than they were last year. I think they could win 45 games, maybe more. I don't know how they're going to stop anybody. But I think just as a fan that's going to the arena and you want to see a better basketball product, I think they've achieved that. Lonzo Ball goes a long way towards that, while also sort of ticking the type of box that we tend to like more generally of the good expenditure on a young player. I just can't even, so I've laid all that out as a runway to say I'm giving them a D+, and I'd like to be harsher just because I can't see anything worth celebrating in when you set your sights so low. The way that the Bulls have acted is we're really close to getting over the top. We have to make some win now moves and spend a little wildly and sacrifice some youth. And they're not at that stage. They're at a stage where they're trying to make the playoffs. Zach LaVine hasn't played a playoff minute yet. So the DeRozan signing, or sign and trade, whatever you want to call it, I just don't know where the market was that necessitated the outlay that they had to make. I don't think it was realistic to say San Antonio was going to pony up and come anywhere close to that. I just don't know where he was going to sign that they needed to go this high. Exclude from that the fact that he doesn't really make a lot of sense as a fit, as an offense really only player that doesn't stretch the floor. Great passer. Everyone's going to talk about that. But Vucevic can pass. LaVine can pass. He just feels like overkill in an area that they don't need at great cost. So he, to me, offsets what I think was a pretty good signing in Lonzo Ball and another decent one in Alex Caruso to such a degree that and you lose Thaddeus Young, who I think, maybe even in a vacuum is an objectively more helpful player when you're trying to win games than DeRozan. So this is, I think, my worst grade in the conference, just because I think the Bulls, they went big at a small, or at a kind of unimpressive target. Like, I just don't think you do this to try to win 40 some odd games. So that's my screed. Where are you on their grade?
Your outrage convinced me to go down to a C minus because I thought I was being too hard on them since there were things about their offseason I liked. That being
Me too.
said, and look, I think the Lonzo Ball pickup was great. He's just look, he's not going to give you the half court creation. You do have that in Zach LaVine. Vooch is going to give you some of that. DeMar DeRozan obviously gives you some of that. And I do think there's a pathway to this team being really good offensively, but you are all of a sudden, I think, asking Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, and Vooch to all have the ball even less. And that is a combustible cocktail. I also don't know, you're not going to look to play super fast with DeMar DeRozan on the court. And that's what you should be doing when Lonzo Ball and Zach LaVine are both playing together, to me. Still, I see the pathway to them making it work offensively. They really compromised their defense with this. They put an awful lot of pressure on Patrick Williams and even Alex Caruso, who's not going to have the safety net that is Anthony Davis and LeBron James around him like he had in Los Angeles. I still think that deal is fine. I liked that for them. What the hell does this mean about Kobe White's development by having DeRozan and LaVine and Lonzo Ball now? You've nuked his trade value, even if you want to make another trade. You spend enough time on the DeRozan thing. I think I agree with everything you basically said. I really do think this could be a great offensive team. I struggle to see how they're going to succeed defensively. Thaddeus Young would have helped them there. That's where I really had a problem. And maybe you don't have to give up as much if you're not also including Aminu's essentially dead money at this point in the deal. And so that hurts them. You've mortgaged too much of your future now for me. And I know the Thad Young, Vooch minutes weren't great last year defensively for Chicago. That was a small sample size. Like seeing that with Patrick Williams together, they might have had a better shot at coming closer to a league average defense. If that happens this year, I'll be flabbergasted. But what was really overkill for me is, can you at least incorrectly chase winning correctly? Why did you get Derrick Jones Jr. in the Larry Nance Jr. trade, Larry Nance Jr. is a way better fit for your team. He's on the same timeline as that Vooch contract too, with 2 years, sub $20 million left. He can play next to Vooch. You could probably get some small ball 5 minutes out of him. Imagine the defensive malleability in a lineup with both Patrick Williams and Larry Nance Jr. And hey, also Alex Caruso, maybe even Lonzo Ball. I'm not going to say they're going to be a great defensive team, but WTF, you went after the draft pick in that trade? Like, I know that gives you the flexibility to then trade said draft pick in another deal this summer, but Larry Nance Jr. was the best player in that deal. You didn't need Portland to come in and do this at all. You just decided that you wanted Portland's pick that is either going to convey this season or not at all, because Dame is gone after this year. I'll be shocked if he's still in Portland. So can you at least be consistent with the mode of thought here? Like, if you're going to acquire and mortgage your future for win now talent, hey, continue to accumulate this win now talent. I know Derrick Jones Jr. will help them defensively. He's going to shrink the floor. He can't play with DeMar DeRozan. That will be a disaster. And look, if you try to play him even with Caruso, who's like an average shooter at best. So I just don't and I'm not saying Larry Nance Jr. is a light out shooter, but he's shooting 35+% from three over the past 2 seasons and can just be moved around a ton on defense, just as much, if not more so, than Derrick Jones Jr. So I'm going to spend time harping on that trade because it just felt like it was counterintuitive relative to everything else they did. Is they took the longer term play, or like the mystery box play with that pick plus Derrick Jones Jr.'s expiring contract. I don't understand why you don't take Larry Nance Jr. as part of that sign and trade. So I liked bits and parts of their offseason. I can't give them lower than a C minus. I definitely understand why you went as low as a D, just because that, they negated a lot of what they did. And like you said, they'd already hamstrung themselves long term for what was a pretty middling present in that Vooch trade. And they fucked up because they didn't make the play-in. You don't make that Vooch trade unless you want to make the postseason last year as well. They didn't. They didn't even make the play-in. I know Zach LaVine ended up being in health and safety protocols for a beat. That ends up being a screw up to make that trade then, because you gave up the number 8 pick and you finished and so what, I just don't know where they were going then. You now doubled down on that, but then didn't continue to triple down. You just decided to take that Portland pick. They're confusing the hell out of me. And I don't want to say I hated their offseason because I love Lonzo Ball here. I really like Ayo Dosunmu. Maybe they actually try and play him. And I really do think that Alex Caruso is a solid fit. But even what is the backup 5 situation right now? Are you really relying on Tony Bradley, or are we going to see Patrick Williams play some 5 or Derrick Jones Jr. play some 5? That might actually be fairly inventive, but there probably needs to be another big type on this roster behind Vooch as well, which they just don't have right now.
2 closing thoughts. One, I'm
Does
glad you
Stanley
mentioned
Johnson
Patrick
sway
Williams.
this for you at all? By the way, I think I forgot to add him. I forgot they also have Stanley Johnson.
Uh, Let me check. Nope, needle's not moving. Yeah, it's not moving. Um, Patrick Williams. And Kobe White to sort of a lesser extent because I don't think he's as integral a piece in what should be the Bulls' long term outlook, presuming they have one. One of the things that made Williams frustrating last year is he has significant offensive talent. That's not his bag yet. He's kind of a gap filler still at this stage, defender, the little things guy. But what the Bulls wanted was for him to be more aggressive. Like there are all these quotes from throughout last year of him saying that the coaching staff they want me, the first thing I do when I get a touch is look at the basket because he has a habit of not doing that. And if one of your franchise goals, which it should be for a team in Chicago's position, whatever they think their position is, their actual position should be we want our best young prospect to develop in the ways that will be helpful to us. If you stick him on a team that's just chock full of guys that can get their own shots and that like to do that, you're not going to see a lot of offensive growth. Maybe he gets great at the other stuff. Maybe he goes Kawhi Leonard and just, becomes a great defensive player and rebounds and does, lives off other guys setting him up for a while before he takes that next step. That'd be a great outcome, but you're not exactly helping that happen. The second thing is, and this is a smaller point, we need teams to stop valuing players on how they looked in their last season with the Heat. Because Derrick Jones Jr. is another guy now, right? And Josh Richardson was the last one before this. This is a trend. Teams need to not value the guy that gets in the best shape of his life because he's terrified of his team, whatever Pat Riley is, team president, I guess. And they treat the operation like a military, regime. Like we're done. We need to just whatever a guy did in his last year with the Heat, you need to knock 25% off of it for your expectations going forward. That's all I'll say about the Derrick Jones deal.